Former High Commissioner Alexander Downer joins me here on this typical London morning, I might say. Alexander Downer, thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure, Laura.
Looking at the polls, we all are flying blind at the moment. There's a media blackout today as well, which is something different. We don't experience that in Australia. I hate to ask about predictions, but what is your sense of things to come over the next 12 hours or so?
Look, I could be wrong, but my sense, and just on the basis of anecdotal evidence as well as the polls, is that the Conservatives will get an overall majority, but not a very big one. But anyway, I think an overall majority for them of 1 or 2 is probably going to be enough. But I'm not 100% sure. I think there's still a chance it could end up by being a hung parliament. What you can be sure of is that Labor won't get an overall majority. That is absolutely out of the question. The Liberal Democrats, who are like the Australian Democrats, they won't do very well. So there are question marks, though, about the Conservatives, but I think they probably will make it.
Yeah, those question marks still do linger. There's a lot of unpopularity that's directed in the way of both individual men and the men they are perceived to be by the media and the British public. If the Conservatives do get a majority of, say, less than 10, are we assured of some kind of stability ahead, or the troublemakers that remain in the Conservatives, are they likely to still cause that chaos?
Well, I think if they get a majority of less than 10, the first thing you can be sure of is they'll get out of the European Union on the 31st of January. So all Conservative candidates have signed up to support the agreement that Boris Johnson's negotiated with the EU. But secondly, beyond that, I think there would be a certain amount of uncertainty. When you talk of the troublemakers, I mean, perhaps wrongly, but nevertheless, Boris Johnson expelled 21 of them from the Conservative Party before the election. Some of those people are standing this time as independents. My guess is none of them will win. So in that sense, he's freed himself of quite a few so-called troublemakers. But I mean, you know what parliaments are like. People who you'd never think of can become troublemakers. And that's probably what would happen if you had a majority of less than 10.
Now,
but not on the Brexit issue. If the Conservatives get an absolute majority, Brexit will happen. If they don't, there'll be continual chaos.
Brexit is the driving force. This is known as the Brexit election, and it absolutely is. But what I've sensed in recent weeks, there are so many other issues that are driving people's votes. The NHS, for one. Is this the Brexit election, or is it about something else, the end to austerity?
No, I think, first of all, people do recognise it's the Brexit election. This is the one which will decide whether they leave or whether there's just continual turmoil and possibly they don't leave the European Union. So that is the central issue. There's no doubt that the Labor Party has wanted to push the Brexit issue to the back burner and concentrate on the National Health Service. Now, as we know in Australia, health is always an important issue, but responsibility is split between the federal government and the states. Here, they have this single nationalised health system, the NHS, the National Health Service, and it's a sacred institution in Britain. It doesn't matter what your politics are, you love the NHS, which, by the way, has relatively poor outcomes compared to the health services of other Western countries. Doesn't matter, they absolutely love it. And it's an issue that favours Labor. So the Labor Party have concentrated very heavily on spending, X number of £1 billion on the NHS and focused on problems within the health service. And I think, that's worked quite well for them, and it's deflected the debate a bit away from Brexit. But in the end, this is the Brexit election.
Given the problems that the Labor Party has had, Jeremy Corbyn, anti-Semitic taunts within his party, a manifesto that doesn't add up, unapologetic, really sweeping socialism of the UK economy. If Boris Johnson can only get a slim majority, there's a big failure there of the Conservatives in this country, isn't there? Does Boris Johnson need to pull his socks up?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's the Conservatives will get many more votes than Labor. So these questions are often questions of the electoral system. So it depends with single-member constituencies how that electoral system works.
But Boris Johnson needs to unite the United Kingdom, doesn't he? Can you see him being able to do that?
Well, they're divided, though they're not as divided as the media make out. There's nothing like exaggeration and catastrophising for a news story. People are divided over the issue of Brexit, and families are divided, and married couples are divided, and so on. But, you know, they're not trying to kill each other over the issue. So once Brexit has happened, the divisions that exist within the UK will revert to normal. There will be normal divisions over different things, but I wouldn't say, you know, this isn't a country that is on the verge of a revolution, or, you know, there have been marches in the street. They've all been peaceful over the Brexit issue. I wouldn't exaggerate it, and I think when the politicians here talk about vote for me and I'll bring the country together, it's a laugh. I mean, of course they're not going to bring the country together. People who voted Labor are not going to be happy if the Conservatives win, and vice versa. The Conservative voters will be furious if Labor wins. Jeremy Corbyn won't be bringing the country together. So, I mean, they will just plod along. But the issue which has really focused the public mind has been the Brexit issue, and the reason for that is the public voted to leave. 52-48, but they still voted to leave. You've got the Liberal Democrats, the minor party, whose vote has, according to the polls, almost halved over 5 weeks, because they said they would discount the result of the referendum. That has really annoyed people. And for people living, as you were saying in your introduction, people who traditionally vote Labor but voted to leave the EU, a lot of those people are thinking of voting Conservative this time, which is pretty fatal for Labor.
Well, what's the best outcome for the relationship with Australia?
I think, you know, that's a hard question to answer. We have a very, very strong relationship with the UK. I think if Jeremy Corbyn became the Prime Minister, British foreign policy would be something that we've never seen before. Britain is the number 2 country in the Western Alliance after the United States. Basically, the number 2 would be sidelined. Britain would not be any longer a significant part of the Western Alliance. Jeremy Corbyn's friends are not typically friends of the West. The Iranians, Hamas, Hezbollah, these sort of people are the people he aligns himself with. So, I mean, I think that would be a setback for our security relationship with the UK. It could lead to us not passing some intelligence to the UK any longer. So it's easier for us if the Conservatives win on that front. As far as Brexit is concerned, if Brexit happens, we can negotiate a free trade agreement with the UK that could improve our trade and investment relations, could lead to easier access to visas for Australians who want to work in the UK. So there might be some upsides from that as well.
Yes, there are certainly upsides to everything, and that is one of them. Can I switch continents for a moment? We saw the Justice Department report overnight. You would have seen it as well. Do you feel vindicated?
Well, I don't really want to comment on this. I said a lot about it 6 or so months ago, and I really think that things should just take their course. There's still a further investigation going on, and we'll just wait until that investigation is concluded. But I mean, I think it's an interesting report produced by the Inspector General in the Department of Justice.
Is it wrong?
Well, I'm not commenting on that. I mean, there are a huge number of issues in it, so I wouldn't be even qualified to comment on most of it.
Is your part of it wrong?
Well, I'm just not going to comment on it.
Mr. Downer, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. We have a long day ahead, and hopefully we'll speak to you before we leave London as well. Appreciate your time.
Okay.